It's one of the most hyped bourbons of the last couple of years. Today we're doing a review of Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. All right, I am so excited. This is just an awesome experience to get to sit down and do this review for you guys. We are talking today about Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. By far and away one of the most hyped bourbons of the years. In the couple of years I've been hunting whiskey and doing this channel, this is one of the ones that has just gotten the most hype, most written about, most sought after, most talked about in the whiskey tube community. Really excited to get my hands on a bottle, first of all, because it's hard to get one, and two, get to dive in and do a full review for you all. So why exactly is this bottle getting so much hype? You've probably heard from others, but just to quickly recap, the truth is it's because it's almost double the age Maker's Mark has ever done any whiskey at. So Maker's Mark's typical releases are somewhere between 6 to 7 years old. They do that on purpose, kind of keep everything consistent. They have one mash bill there. I believe it's 70% corn, 16% red winter wheat, and 14% barley. At least that's what's thought to be the mash bill. They keep that consistent. They keep the aging relatively consistent. And that just means a quality product across the board. For decades, literally many years, people have been clamoring for an older Maker's Mark, for something in that 11 to 12 to 13-year-old range, just to see what this beloved wheated mash bill could be like at a higher age, and Maker's Mark has delivered that. So the stats particularly here are, this is a special blend of aged barrels, 13% whiskey aged 11 years, and 87% is aged 12 years. So leaning more toward that 12-year-old mark. And then this is also cask strength, so it's 115.7 proof. Maker's Mark traditionally goes into the barrel at a lower proof than a lot of other distilleries, so a lot of their cask strength stuff comes out around that 110 mark, and 115 is pretty solidly high for them actually. Pricing wise, this is a bottle that sits at $150 MSRP, which isn't too bad considering the stats and the limitedness of this. You may not be able to see it at MSRP though. It might get marked up too. I think I've been seeing more like 400, 450, which is quite a pretty penny. It's a very special limited bottle, but by all accounts, those who have tasted it and reviewed it seem to be loving it and seem to be placing it high on lists of all of 2023's bourbons. So super excited. Without further ado, let's dive in. Let's get this review going. I can't wait to nose it and taste it. All right, everybody. Maker's Mark Cellar Aged on the nose. It's good. Oh, man. Rich and fruity. First couple words that come to mind. It's got this like rich, dark cherry, almost tending toward like a plum. Rich, dark fruit. Brown sugar wrapped all around that. A little bit of like an apple note as well. Something a little fresher. But mostly it's those darker, rich tones. Vanilla, nice soft, warm vanilla rounding around all of that. It smells brown sugar viscous, like a little buttery even. Nothing super, almost nothing sharp actually. Nothing aggressive. You can really dig into it, but it's sweet and pleasant. Good amount of oak on there too. Yeah, that's just easy to dive into. And a good mix of some of those fresher, bright notes, but darker and richer than almost any other Maker's Mark I've smelled, for sure. All right, the nose, really nice and complex. So let's dive into the palate and get a lot more information. Cheers, everybody. Oh, man. Yeah, it's spectacular. Beautiful. That's the word that comes to mind. It's a beautiful whiskey. It is full of rich brown sugar and oak. Honestly, the palate was spicier than the nose let on, but it's that really nice clove, cinnamon, baking spice almost fall spice-esque that you'd expect from that Maker's Mark profile. With the red winter wheat, kind of softens things up, but there's still a good amount of spice that I get on there, and it's just the pleasant, really nice, warm spice that you want. Again, brown sugar and oak, and then it's really cherry and fruity as well. There's that dark, almost black cherry note. It's kind of that thing tending toward the plum richness, but maybe a touch of this like caramel apple thing going on as well. But yeah, it's nice and viscous. The finish is long. It's still continuing to linger for me, which is really, really good. All right, well, now that we've got it on the palate, let's go in for a second sip, pick out some more flavors. But again, it's beautiful. All right, cheers. Interesting. Yeah, that sip came forward. The front part of the sip was those brighter notes. It was more of a bright cherry, some apple, a little bit of a brighter vanilla, and then it just turns darker and sinks into that oak and brown sugar and dark cherry. And what lingers is this warm vanilla, some of that good spice, and like that dark black cherry, viscous, almost cherry cordial, melted on top of like pancakes or French toast. Yeah, that's a special experience when it does that, when it can come out bright and punchy, but then really sink into that deeper, darker tones. That's what you're missing on the younger Maker's Mark. Or I wouldn't say missing. I get that they do the 6 and 7 year old stuff, and that's a pretty nice age, and they keep that consistent. And I actually have no qualms with most Maker's Mark products, but that's what people have been wanting with this 12-year-old stuff, is the bass tones to come in and really show you. Yeah, it's really, really good. There's not much more to say. Let's go in for a third sip. Let's evaluate the finish, and I'll recap the full experience for you. Before we do that, I do just want to say, if you're enjoying all the content coming out of the channel, would love to have you aboard as a subscriber. Trying to reach 2,000 by the end of 2023. That's the new goal I've made for myself, so would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and join the Bourbon Hutch community. While you're at it, hit that like button. That's what helps get the video out the most. And then also comment down below, have you been able to taste Maker's Mark cellar-aged? If you have, what did you think? All right, let's go in for the third sip and evaluate that finish. Cheers. Man. So this sip, I actually got a couple more layers there. One thing I'm noticing is this like subtle wheat sweetness that wraps around a lot of it and keeps it from having any of those sharp edges. Again, there's spice, but I do think the wheated profile here helps it feel rounded, and there's this almost just like wheat sweetness. It's quite solid when it's mixed with all these other flavors. Another thing I noticed is, as the finish began and the back end of the palate hit, I got more of these oak tannins, almost a dark chocolate with a slight bitterness built into that. And then honestly, the finish, that starts to build up, and then the finish did come back to that vanilla cherry, dark cherry sweetness, and it continues to linger with some spice. It is really, really good. Those oak tannins and that dark chocolate added an extra layer, slight bitterness, but when it's so nicely balanced out by that rich, sweet cherry and vanilla, almost nothing to complain about here. I just want to revisit the nose one more time. Okay, picking up on a little bit more of the spice now. It continues to have a little bit more of an apple pungency on it to the nose. You can get hints of that darker richness, and it's definitely there, but the nose is a little bit lighter and brighter, and then the palate really turns on that dark tones to the back end, and especially in the finish, which is really, really good. Okay, everybody, I know I'm gushing. You've probably heard other reviewers talking about how good this is. I'm not adding much to the conversation in terms of criticizing it, because you shouldn't criticize beautiful whiskey, and this is beautiful whiskey. I applaud Maker's Mark for hearing the cries of the people and responding with a 12-year-old bourbon. This particular new system they have where they age it in their cellar, which is a little bit cooler and easier to control for them. I do think when you pair that with the wheat, it's just this rounded, cohesive product that I really hope they continue to release these and that you're able to see them, and if not this year, then maybe next year or the year after, because this does say 2023 release right on the front, which gives me hope that there's going to be a 2024 and a 2025 and that they're planning to do this for the foreseeable future. That would be fantastic. Where would I put this in terms of whiskeys I've tasted this year and throughout my entire whiskey tasting journey all time? Is pretty high up there. This year, the only other thing I can think that I've tasted that might rival it is the C923 from Elijah Craig. That's an absolute hitter, a little heftier profile. So it'll be interesting to see which of those two comes out on top at the end of this year when I do my Whiskey of the Year series. So keep an eye out for that. Stay tuned. All time, it's probably in the top 5 that I've ever tasted, and I'd have to taste it directly against the others, which again, that might be something we do in the near future. But it's beautiful. I think the word that just keeps coming to mind is it's beautiful whiskey. All right, everybody, that's going to do it. Again, would love to hear in the comments if you've been able to taste this. What did you think? Are you still currently hunting it? I hope you're able to find one and taste it as well. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey. Thanks, Maker's Mark, for hearing the cries of the people, and cheers.